Y'all, another day, another MrBeast scandal.
All right, I got off the treadmill. Oh, the blisters I had on my feet were like, you wouldn't believe, just all over, just these big red. I couldn't walk. My muscles were like just the lactic acid. So I'm in this situation where my mental health is not good. My physical health is getting worse, but we're filming. So I'm doing bits. It was too real. If they're faking videos, why couldn't we fake this one? But Jimmy had his he was sitting in the chair turned around like an evil villain. Swear to God.
So that is Jake Weddle, and he used to work for MrBeast. And those clips you just saw come from a video that Dogpack404, aka Dawson, uploaded last night titled, "I worked for MrBeast. He's a sociopath." With this being part 2 of Dawson's expose on Jimmy, right? We talked about part 1 last week, with him in that video calling MrBeast a fraud, claiming that Jimmy rigs his competitions and is running illegal lotteries targeting kids. And that's among other things, like I talked about when we last covered it. The video covering all the allegations, it was almost an hour long, so we weren't able to go point by point, but I'm gonna include links in the description so you can watch it. But in this latest installment, Jake makes some truly disturbing allegations in a sit-down interview with Dawson. Like, I mean, we're talking about allegations like Jimmy knowingly hiring a registered sex offender, also allegations about what's been described as war crime level torture, but we also have to talk about a few smaller things to get there. Because to start painting the picture, you had Jake saying he worked for MrBeast from 2019 to 2020, and he briefly appeared on the channel again in 2021. With Jake saying that he watched the MrBeast channel move from genuine to stage, saying that it went from a guy with a camera to something like Amazon, with him pointing specifically there to a video that he worked on himself about a fake meteor hitting his car. So, he knew about the bit from the beginning and even asked his mom to play into it for the video. But more importantly, out of the accusations of staging and faking videos, Jake talks about the culture of Team Beast, like what it is like to work there. And he claimed that there are 2 camps of people at the company, those who were on Jimmy's good side and those who weren't. But Jake saying he often found himself in the camp that wasn't, and therefore his parts of the video were often left on the cutting room floor. He also said that Jimmy didn't want people on his team to have an out, right, a way to get big outside of him.
He didn't want anyone to get more popular or have more of a way out necessarily. Like, oh, I'm doing my Twitch thing on the side. Don't do that because you could get famous and leave and talk about me negatively.
With that claim then appearing to be backed up by Jake the Viking, another former member of Team Beast, with him claiming on X that he was asked to delete his social media and he refused. Then there was the actual salary aspect of working for MrBeast, with Jake saying that his pay didn't reflect the work that he was putting in or the revenue the videos were making. Something that he said became a bigger issue when he realized that there was another writer that was making even less than Jake despite working the same job and being a parent. And so with that, you had Jake saying he thought that was wrong, he wanted that dealt with, but also noting that the other writer didn't want to rock the boat, saying that he liked his job.
But he said, hey man, if that's how you feel, like if that's like, I trust you. He stood with me. He went to that meeting with me. And I said my piece and he backed me up. And I said, I need XYZ or I'm out of here. And they said, bet. And they gave me a severance check the next day. And they gave him a severance check the next day. And if I knew he was going to lose his job too, I wouldn't have done it.
Also, as far as Jimmy himself, Jake says his goal isn't actually helping people, it's being the best YouTuber. With Jake echoing a criticism that we've heard about MrBeast for years, right? Filming yourself doing nice things isn't actually doing nice things.
I think when he's generous on camera, it's the least authentic thing in the world. There's an element of, oh, hey, you're crying. That's so good for camera. I'm so glad if you're crying because you're so thankful that you got XYZ, and then you go, oh, I'm so glad he needed it that bad so I could come in and, can you cry more? Oh, it's so good for the camera if you could. Oh, it made me uncomfortable that I was working there, and I didn't like it, and I vocalized it sometimes, and I think that's why I wasn't on camera as much. Everybody loves Jimmy, and behind closed doors, he is not super great, and that image is cultivated purposefully and intentionally, and it's branding, it's marketing, it's YouTube.
But with all of that said, it brings us to what's really gotten the most attention here. Because in 2021, Jimmy's team, they called Jake back for a video. And the idea there was 100 days in solitary confinement. A video that may sound familiar to you because MrBeast's team actually did end up putting a video together, but it was with someone else. Because according to Jake, the first time they filmed it, it went very, very wrong. Starting off, you had Jake saying that all the stuff that they gave him to try and make the confinement bearable actually had the opposite effect, saying that the hot tub wasn't actually connected to a filtration system, so it got very smelly, the shower was always cold, the ice cream machine was either too loud or if he turned it off, it started to smell like mildew and rotten milk. Also notably, he said the lights never shut off despite him making requests as well as complaints that he couldn't sleep.
I had good people looking out for me. I had a lot of good people looking out for me saying, this, we gotta stop. So I just wanted to turn the lights off. And I'm vocalizing to people, I wish the light would turn off. And I go up to my friend, my good friend. And I go, they're not turning the lights off. He goes, what? That's a war crime. We're not allowed to do that to terrorists. Oh, good. 24 hours breaking the Geneva Convention, I guess, is what we're doing.
With him also going on to say that he'd get lines to say to the cameras from Jimmy or the director.
This is the note I got from the director, from Jimmy, when I'm receiving some cash. He said, Jimmy said, can you say to the camera how thankful you are that now you can pay back your student loans? You know how hard it was to do a take of that? And pretend to make it genuine? I don't want to have student loans. I don't want to be in a cage. But Jimmy's the guy with the money, and if you do what he says, he'll do what you want. You want your student loans paid off? You just be in this cage.
Throughout the whole experience, Jake says that he was suffering, but he was always trying to perform, right? To stay on for the cameras.
I'm talking to the camera! And I'm being, like, hey, it's been a couple days, I'm not doing so hot, which if I'm filming a video, that's what I should be doing for the camera, but it was too real. If they're faking videos, why couldn't we fake this one? If we're allowed to let these cast members have some time off of this difficult challenge, how come we couldn't turn the lights off?
With him also saying even with everything that was going on, Jimmy had challenges for Jake to do, including solving a Rubik's Cube, which he says he tried to refuse but was told to just do the thing. And then saying there was another challenge to run a marathon on a treadmill, with Jake saying that he felt like he couldn't say no.
There was so much pressure to just do it, just do the thing, And if I refuse, it's just, oh, that's the whole video. I guess the budget's, so much money up in flames because Jake said he wouldn't want to do the thing. And so I wanted to be a good sport, and I wanted to get the boost, and I wanted the cash, and so I started running at 12. I was able to take some breaks, and I asked him, how long do I have? He goes, until I get back. And I'm running until 3 a.m. When I got off the treadmill, the blisters I had on my feet were like, you wouldn't believe, just all over, just these big red. I couldn't walk. My muscles were like just the lactic acid.
Right, and after that, Jake says that he called it off, saying he couldn't do it anymore.
And they didn't let me leave right away either. They wanted to make sure, everything was fine. So I just, slept for a while. They turned the lights off. And it's like they brought in all my friends, to make it. They brought in all the people I liked and Jimmy.
With Jake then going on to claim that the first thing Jimmy said to him was,
as if rehearsed by his lawyers. Your mental health's the most important thing. I just want to make sure you're okay. And the last thing we want you to do is... I can almost hear the word Sue come out of his mouth. The S, he just stopped right before it got out.
And so Jake saying he ended up getting $100,000 and some change for the whole experience. So of course with that, he ended up having to pay over $40,000 in taxes that year. You also had Jake saying that he shared some text messages that he got right after they cut filming, or where it looks like he said that he wasn't in a good place mentally, that the blisters on his feet still hurt to walk on, that his therapist was concerned about him. And all this is something that was supposed to be a fun MrBeast video, not obviously a traumatic experience. But Jake also saying he's never been invited back to the channel since then. But then also after sharing that story, Dawson shifted directions and asked Jake about the Ava Chris Tyson situation and whether he witnessed any sexual misconduct at the company, which we saw Jake reply that he spent a considerable amount of time with Ava, and while she definitely made offhand and gross jokes, they didn't raise any concern in Jake because he's a comedian. But Jake also went on to say that it was more than just Ava.
I heard, people have been let go for sexually assaulting some very young people. Well, there was a known sex offender, registered sex offender, convicted sex offender on the registry and everything, who worked there. But that guy, from what I hear, I can't confirm or deny, from what I hear, he's on the registry for doing some not great stuff to some underage people. And they knew that. And he's working at a channel that has underage people on and around and is targeted to underage people. And they covered up the fact that not only did he work there, but he was like the manager when it all started.
With Dawson then going on to say that another former MrBeast employee said that the company was working to expunge the record of this employee from the sex offender registry, with a person being identified as Delaware and people quickly making the connection saying, hey, isn't that Jake the Viking's brother-in-law? Right, one, Jake the Viking also being a former Beast employee, and two, that's something that he confirmed today, explaining on X, yes, Delaware is my brother-in-law. Yes, he is a RSO. And saying when he was 21, a 16-year-old girl accused him and others of SA when she was 11. Delaware took a plea deal. That's why there was no jail time, but he still had to register. And with that saying, he was hired before I was and was actually the reason I got hired at MrBeast. Before being hired, Delaware sat down with Jimmy and Sue, Jimmy's mom, and explained to them everything. So yes, Jimmy knew, but again, this incident happened in 2010. Delaware was hired in 2017, 2018. And going on to claim Delaware's charges are set to be dropped this fall. I understand why anyone would be upset and frustrated over these allegations, and I do not blame them. Hurting kids in any way is completely unacceptable, but in the case of Delaware, I firmly believe he did nothing wrong and look forward to the day these charges are dropped. But with all that said, as far as if there's more to the story regarding allegations, at the very least, I'll say Dawson has promised a part 3.
So I will just tell you, James, what will be in part 3, so you don't have to harass my people. It will be about serious allegations of sexual misconduct in the company and your direct involvement in covering up those crimes. And I'll make sure to give you full credit and plaster your face all over the screen when we talk about that.
And then it also doesn't end there. I mean, Rolling Stone, for example, just published an article last night where they spoke to a woman who was reportedly Ava's executive assistant from 2023 to 2024, with her claiming the two formed a sexual relationship before she got the job, but also noting that she always felt like she had to say yes to anything to get the job, claiming that it got to the point where Ava would just start dropping her pants randomly and ask for oral sex. And that former assistant saying everything became very one-sided and she now views this as sexual assault. Also, in terms of a response, we haven't seen anything public yet from Jimmy or his team, but there is an email that appears to be an internal communication from Jimmy to those within the company that's been making the rounds online, right? And that's saying the third-party investigation that Jimmy promised following the Ava Chris Tyson allegations that will be expanded to include, quote, a full assessment of our internal culture and to investigate allegations of inappropriate behavior by people in the company. The email also going on to say that the company is implementing several changes in light of the preliminary findings of that investigation, with that including hiring a new chief human resources officer and implementing mandatory training on safety, sexual harassment, diversity, sensitivity, and workplace conduct. Also saying they'll be implementing anonymous reporting and listening sessions with the new president and COO of the company, and saying they've also asked an external company to come in and review their policies and practices. With Jimmy saying, as your leader, I take full responsibility and I am committed to continue to improve and evolve my leadership style. I recognize that I also need to create a culture that makes all our employees feel safe and allows them to do their best work. But for now, that is where we are. And of course, I'd love to know your thoughts on this whole situation in those comments down below.